またな、フラエって。
Hey everyone, it's Mark. This is my recap for Pokemon Journeys episode 66, Flabebe's White Flower. This was the 1151st episode of the Pokemon anime, and guys, I am so excited this week. No, not because of the episode, we'll get to that in a minute. I'm excited because just before I sat down to watch the episode this week, I submitted the last assignment I had for my grad program this spring semester. I know many of you know that feeling of relief and celebration when you finally finish that last paper or exam or whatever it may be for a school year, and yeah, I am so glad that's over with. Of course, the only way I know how to celebrate something like that is by reviewing another thrilling episode of Pokemon Journeys, so let's get into it. Oh yeah, wait, hold on a second. Before we dive into the highlights, I just wanted to mention that my review for last week went out several days late because, you know, all of that schoolwork I just got finished doing. So check that one out if you haven't already. It's a really thorough review of Iris' epic return, but with that out of the way, we can turn our attention to this week's equally monumental episode. The episode starts at the Cerise Park, and apparently they have this one section of the park that is like a flower garden, which is almost as cute as the relationship Goh's Pinsir and Heracross have. Ash and Goh notice Goh's Flabebe flying around as fast as they can, and this results in all of them evolving into Floette. This isn't the first time we've seen Goh's Pokemon evolve on its own in the Cerise Park, and when this happened with Sobble, I thought it was kind of a letdown, but with Pokemon like Flabebe, I think it's cool to see. Goh's collection of Pokemon at the Cerise Park are really like wild Pokemon living in their own environment, so it's only natural that they would all evolve at their own rate, just like wild Pokemon do. Anyways, we only saw 4 of Goh's 5 Flabebe, and it turns out the other one had fallen behind because one of the petals of its flower had fallen off. Also, I could probably mention this at any point during the video, but I may as well say it now. Goh's White Flower Flabebe was really cute throughout this episode. We rarely see Pokemon this small in the anime, and I thought its mannerisms were adorable for the entire episode, given how small and precious of a Pokemon it is. And since this is Pokemon Journeys, and Ash and Goh can travel anywhere in the Pokemon world at the drop of a dime, they jet off to KALOS in order to look for a replacement flower for Goh's Flabebe. They start their search near Shalor City, as that's where Goh caught his Flabebe in the first place, and it was cool to see the arena where Ash battled Karina in the Battle Fest back in episode 25. We got teases of Ash's former adventures in KALOS during this entire episode, and this was the first of those. Goh puts Flabebe's flower into a container since it can't be flown without all of its petals, and Flabebe positions itself atop Goh's head. And now that Trainer and Pokemon are fully synchronized, their transformation into Goh Flabebe is complete. What an unstoppable duo, truly a new form that can never be stopped. In other words, this was a meme that started over on my Discord server, and we now have a custom Goh Flabebe emoji over there to celebrate the second coming of the Bond phenomenon. Let's get back to the actual episode, and Flabebe starts guiding Goh using his hair, but when Grookey tries the same, it's not as successful. They get to the spot where Flabebe's white flowers grow, but apparently that specific spot has been crushed by rocks, so there are no more white flowers. Great. They call it a day and regroup at a Pokemon Center, and Grookey does its best to cheer up the depressed Flabebe, and see, I told you there were plenty of allusions to Ash's KALOS adventures. That hairstyle looks pretty familiar for Ash's male traveling companions. Goh and Flabebe go for a walk at night, and funny enough, they end up at the same spot Ash once stood when he first came to Shalor City. Their second day of searching is as successful as the first, since Flabebe will only ride a very specific white flower. They end up camping out overnight, and Goh and Flabebe have another nighttime interaction, this time with Flabebe trying, and failing, to fly with its broken flower. The next day, Professor Cerise finds a lead for them and sends them to this woman's house, and not only is she knowledgeable about the kind of flowers Flabebe and Floette like, but she has a florist herself. Apparently, this Florges conveniently has the same backstory as Goh's Flabebe, since it had its original flower broken as well. So the two Pokemon bond pretty quickly, and Florges demonstrates to move grassy terrain and grow some flowers because of it. The lady tells Ash and Goh where a cluster of white flowers is growing, so Ash and Goh head off to look for it, with Flabebe copying the movements Florges used when using grassy terrain. We get one last XY illusion when a Dedenne conveniently appears. Were there any Serena references in this episode that I missed? They find some flowers that stand out, but they're pink pink, so they move on. Fast forward a couple of hours, and of course, the same pink flowers end up being the ones they've been looking for this entire time. I kind of expected Grookey to use its drum beating technique to help the flowers bloom, but it's actually just the moonlight hitting the flowers at just the right time that causes them to bloom. So not only was it a research breakthrough that pink flowers can bloom into the white flowers used by Flabebe, but also it fit in thematically with Goh and Flabebe's nighttime interactions throughout this episode. So Goh's Flabebe finally has a new flower, and almost immediately after that, another Flabebe comes and picks one of the white flowers, leaving only one left. Cut to the epic evolution sequence. Okay, epic may be a strong word for this episode, but Goh's Flabebe does evolve into Floette and successfully uses grassy terrain to sprout some more white flower buds. In a rather abrupt change of plans, Goh decides to release Floette right here, since he realizes it wants to stay and protect the white flowers so other Flabebe don't have to go through the same experiences it just had to. The final goodbye happens over on a cliffside and everyone is super emotional, which is understandable because in the same episode that we got the birth of Goh Flabebe, we get the release that was just as devastating as Ash and Greninja's. Wow, another XY reference. I played part of this clip at the start of the episode, but the sun rises to add to the picturesque view as we get what I thought was a pretty anticlimactic way to end the episode, as Goh's Floette flies off into the distance, never to be seen again. Well, probably never again. I'm giving this episode a 5 out of 10 rating. We didn't check off any bingo tiles this episode, so nothing to update there. And yeah, you could probably tell from my reaction to the episode that I didn't care much for this episode. Honestly, I had more fun making the Goh-Flabébé meme than I did actually watching the episode. It wasn't bad. I mean, maybe if I was a little kid I would have gotten more emotional about it, but to me, this just came off as Goh's Bye Butterfree. But, well, worse. I'll explain. So the whole episode was about Goh and his white flower Flabebe bonding together before they ultimately part ways at the end of the episode. What Bye Butterfree had going for it was that Butterfree was the first Pokemon Ash ever caught on his own, so there was more emotional attachment to that. Not only that, the whole episode was basically leading up to the inevitable release. We could see it coming, and that made the bonding all the more emotional. In this episode, we saw Goh's Flabebe for the first time since they were caught, so we had no emotional attachment to them, and the release at the end just felt forced and random. Like, I found myself laughing in disbelief when Goh just turned and asked Floette if it wanted to stay in KALOS, and I don't think that's the kind of emotion they were trying to elicit. Again, to be fair, I am a 23-year-old who has seen it all when it comes to the Pokemon anime. I'm not exactly the target demographic for this kind of emotional appeal. For the little kids who are too young to have watched Bye Butterfree, then I'm guessing this episode probably worked a whole lot better in respect to making it emotional. As for me, I just struggled to get invested throughout the entire episode. I mentioned before that I enjoyed Flabebe's cute mannerisms throughout the episode, and by the end of it, I was actually feeling pretty hyped that maybe this thing may evolve into a Florges one day and become Goh's next rotating team member, kind of like his Scizor or Dugong. Instead, we just got to see Goh's first ever release. He's given Pokemon away before, but this was the first time he's released a Pokemon back into the wild. Side note, but this graphic and Bulbapedia of Goh's Pokemon made me sad because Goh's Sobble used to be right up there next to Cinderace, now it's relegated down to the recurring group. Isn't that depressing? I don't want to spend too much time analyzing this episode. This was just a filler episode that they attempted to make stand out, but its pros and cons leveled out in my opinion, so that's why I gave it a 5 out of 10. Another good episode that showcased Goh's maturity as a trainer, but ultimately I can't get past the thought in my head that this was just a worse version of Bye Butterfree. On that note, Goh has now had his own version of Pikachu's Goodbye back in episode 22 of Journeys, and this episode was his version of Bye Butterfree. Are there other episodes I'm missing that fit this trend? And what other classic Ash episodes will Goh copy next? Usually after Journeys hits us with complete filler, it comes back strong with a crazy episode, but this time we're getting 2 straight weeks of filler before we can get to the good stuff. This preview did not fill me with very much optimism. I think Pikachu getting arrested is going to be funny, but I mean, how obvious did they have to make it in the preview that it's obviously the Morpeko that terrorizes Team Rocket that's actually the culprit? Another episode I'll be going into with low expectations, but hopefully it can exceed those expectations and actually turn out to be a pretty good episode. Thanks so much for watching this video, and let me hear your guys' thoughts about this episode as well as your predictions for next week. Was I too harsh on this episode, and will we ever see the epic return of Goh-Flabébé? It's probably about as likely as an Ash Greninja return if we're being honest. Be sure to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time. Well, you might see something a little different next time.